Thanks for the invite. I think Anyone's Child is an amazing organisation from what I've seen. I think for you people to take in the most tragic of circumstances and do something so positive with it is a great credit to you all, and I'm really quite proud to be here. Okay, so come today to talk a bit about the Loop and the harm reduction work we've been doing at festivals across the UK for the last few years. As Jane says, we set ourselves up in Manchester in 2013. We currently have something like 500 volunteers roundabout, and back in 2014 it was the four of us sat around somebody's kitchen table. So we have done quite well, we think, and it's testament to all our volunteers and the amount of effort that they put in and the hours that they spend on festival sites in muddy fields, sleeping in tents. We really couldn't do it without them, and you know, it's shown me that what we're doing is kind of something that people believe in, and that is shown by the effort that our volunteers are putting in. So just to give them a mention. So we started in 2013, and without a real clear idea of how to do things, and one of the things that we wanted to do was to sort of bring back drug education into the nighttime economy. I'm 43, so I grew up, I sort of came of age, if you like, in the mid-1990s, which was a time of a fair bit of hedonism, shall we say. But it was also the back end of the rave scene, and through the risks identified in the rave scene, organisations like Lifeline were doing some excellent harm reduction work. If you look at the work that Mike Linnell was doing through Lifeline with the magazines like Peanut Pete, and really getting information out there in a way that was accessible to drug users and in a way that we'll take seriously without being preached to. And we kind of felt by 1993 that this had been lost a little, sorry, by 2013, excuse me, that this had been lost a little bit, and certainly since 2010, when the government strategy changed from the harm reduction approach to a much more abstinence-based, recovery-orientated approach, which is absolutely fine as long as it's not at the exception of harm reduction. So the first thing we did was to train the staff at the warehouse project on a bit of drugs awareness. It was all the bar managers that we trained, and just sort of things to look out for. You know, if people might be having problems, this is how they might present, and what to do in that sort of scenario. And it was the next night, on the first night of the warehouse project season, that Nick Bonney unfortunately died after taking MDMA at the warehouse project. So following on from that, the warehouse project worked with us to set up a welfare and education service in the club, where people who weren't medically unwell but weren't quite fit enough to either be in the club or be ejected from the club would come and sit with us. And it was entertaining at times, shall we say. It was hard work, it was long shifts, but we really felt like, you know, we were doing something good. And as part of that, Fiona Measham, our director, had the Home Office come up with one of their drug testing machines, one of the mass spectrometers. And we started to test some of the seizures that were on site, and we started to get an idea of what was being sold. And we took this forward, Fiona, through her work with the police and the Home Office and her knowledge of various festival organisers. It got to the point where in 2016 we launched what we call multi-agency safety testing at a Secret Garden party, and Jane was there that weekend. It was a great weekend. It had never been done in the UK before, and I was talking to my boss yesterday, and I said, you know, whatever happens with my career going forward, you know, I might end up making electric blankets for a living again one day, like I used to do when I was younger. I'll always have that. I'll always be part of that team of amazing people that did something really, really good that weekend. It's something I'm really, really proud of. And from there, it's just gone from strength to strength. So at the first weekend we did at Secret Garden Party, I think we had just over 200 people come and have the drugs tested. And that's because we deliberately not announced it. We didn't want the government getting in the way of it. It was all agreed with the local police and the local licensing organisers and the festival organisers, but we kept it quiet until we'd done it and we'd proved it can work. And the way we got the message out there was we sent researchers around the site doing drugs questionnaires to people, and when they'd done the questionnaires, they were then told, if you want to test your drugs, you can go to the Loop tent. So we had people wandering into the tent looking a bit sheepish, waiting for the police to jump out on them and take all the drugs off them. But the response we got from the public was excellent. I felt like a rock star that weekend. I felt like I'd been performing at the festival. The love that we got from people that used our service, and it just kind of reinforced it. There was a real demand out there. There was a real desire for people to understand what exactly they are putting into their bodies. You know, now we know that people take drugs, But most people take most drugs for reasons of enjoyment, and most people want to stay safe. And this was a chance for them to go some way in order to achieve that aim, to have a good time, to take the drugs that they wanted to take, to enjoy the drugs that they wanted to enjoy, but still stay safe. So this is one small piece in the jigsaw that allows us to do that, and I'm going to explain the process in a couple of minutes. But the starting point we've got to think about is that 1 in 11 adults in the UK used a drug in the last 12 months, according to the Crime Survey of England and Wales. And when you look at the usage rates of 16 to 24-year-olds, 1 in 5 young people aged 16 to 24 used an illegal drug in the last year. And that tells me two things. It tells me, one, that for a lot of young people, taking drugs is part of growing up. It certainly was for me, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. Don't need to go into details, but that was part of my life growing up. It never became a problem for me. You know, listening to Rose's story, she's absolutely right. It's a minority of people that then develop problems and then, you know, families have to go through the experience that Rose and other people in this room have had to go through. But for most people, it is part of growing up. And if you look at the difference between the 16 to 24-year-old group compared to the overall adult population, it seems to be something that people grow out of. But if our government approach is just based on prohibition and telling people not to do it, we are missing a huge opportunity to protect young people. Because if the government only focus on recovery, they are missing them out, because these young people don't need recovery. These young people haven't got a problem. These young people aren't ill. They've got nothing to recover from. What they do need is education and the best chance to look after their own health. And hopefully drug safety testing is something that we can do to help with that. And again, if you look at the deaths that have occurred in recent years, in 2010 there were 2,747 deaths related to illegal drugs. By 2018 that had risen to 4,359. So it's a huge increase since 2010, and it's also been a huge increase since the government strategy changed, in my opinion. If you look at cocaine deaths, there was 144 in 2010, 637 in 2018, and then with the MDMA deaths, there were 8 in 2010, and last year that had gone up to 92. So that's over a tenfold increase in a period of 8 years. It's a huge increase. One of the reasons for that is the sheer strength of ecstasy pills these days. Some of the pills we're testing now are coming in at over 300 milligrams, and that's 3 or 4 times an average dose for most people. That follows a period of MDMA being particularly poor quality, and it appears that the criminal gangs that are making these drugs now want to get their drugs onto the market, and they have this misguided opinion that the way to get people to buy their drugs is to make them as strong as possible. But obviously when the pills are that strong, they are increasing the risk. So we've got a choice. We can do what we've always done, we can do what was said to me when I was a young person, and we can just say no. And we can spell it N-O. Or we can say just say no, K-N-N-O-W. If I got that right, I got that wrong then, that would have been terrible, wouldn't it? Just say no, just know what you're doing, know where you're getting it from, know what your friends are taking, know what the risks are, and know how to reduce them risks. Because if we can get them messages out there, I really believe we can help protect young people, and not just young people. I think the oldest person that used the loop service at Boomtown a couple of years ago was 69. It makes you proud to be British in some ways. So we're not the first people to do drug testing, we're the first people in the UK, but there are 14 organisations across Europe that do this. But in the UK you've got 3 choices of testing your drugs. You can buy a reagent kit off the internet, and you will get 4 or 5 little bottles such as this. This is a reagent kit, and what you do with this, you take a sample of your drug and you drop a small amount of the liquid on it, and depending on what colour it turns, it will tell you what's in there. Very, very limited what it can do, but it can rule out taking contaminants. This would identify PMA. A reagent kit would identify an ethylpentalone, which is something we've been finding quite recently, which is a particularly unpleasant stimulant with an extended period of action, up to 72 hours, linked to cases of transient psychosis, paranoia, people being quite unwell for a few days. Just using that at home can help protect people against that. They could use a Welsh government-funded drug testing service, Wedinos, or Wedinos, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce it, Wedinos I think. And this is an amazing service funded by the Welsh Government where you can send a sample of your drugs to the Welsh Government and they will test it for you and put the result on the internet. So you download your form with your reference number on, you send your sample in with the reference number, a couple of days later it's on the internet. And this is really good. I use it, I'm a trainer in my day job, I train people about drugs and alcohol, so I do keep my eye on the Wedinos website, and there's always something to talk about on training when I'm at work. So I would recommend anybody looks at that. And the only other way in the UK you get drugs tested is to use the multi-agency safety testing service that we run. So I'll just very briefly go through the process just to finish up. So you will come to our tent, where you will be greeted by somebody on the reception area of the tent, and we have on the desk a small lockbox. We will ask that if it's a pill you want testing, we will ask you to give us a full pill, because with a full pill we can identify exactly how much MDMA is in the pill. Or if it's a powder you want testing, we will ask for a small scoop of powder. The customer themselves will put it in a bag and they will put it in the box, so at no point are our people at the front handling any drugs. Obviously handling drugs is officially a crime under the 1972 Misuse of Drugs Act. And then the box will get taken through to the lab, where we have a team of fantastic chemists, all sort of PhD level, very, very intelligent people. But like with a lot of intelligent people, somewhat lacking in social skills sometimes. So we keep them out the back in a cabin. And I'm sure they won't mind me saying that. So then we use various tests. So we'll use a reagent test. We will use a what's called a Bruker mass spectroscopy machine, which will shine an infrared light onto the sample of the drug. And depending on the wavelength that returns from that sample, that will indicate, because obviously every element in the universe reflects differently apparently, so these clever people tell me, reflects differently, and we can say with high confidence what is in there. And then one of our chemists, Guy, who has developed a test called MDMA extraction, where he can take an ecstasy tablet and he can wash it with certain chemicals and be left just with the MDMA, and then he can dry that out and know exactly how much MDMA is in a tablet. And that is really, really important, because as I've said, one of the big problems in MDMA at the moment, and certainly something I believe is contributing to this huge increase in deaths, is the sheer strength of them. So an average dose of MDMA for an average person will be between 70 and 110 milligrams on a broad scale. 2010 onwards, because of law enforcement action out in Cambodia and precursor chemicals becoming available, there was no MDMA in tablets, as I've said. But we are now finding tablets coming in at over 350 milligrams of MDMA. We are also finding things like N-ethylpentalone, that we've talked about. We're finding things like PMA again, which has been linked to a number of deaths in recent years. And in cocaine, and something that we get from the Wedding House website, a substance called levamisole, which is a agricultural worming agent, is found in about 70% of cocaine samples in this country at the moment. Again, this is because we're in an illegal market. And I've just been having a read earlier on, and there's been 2 cases, just in one report I was reading, of bacterial necrosis in the cheeks and earlobes in 2 patients that have been found because of this levamisole. So in terms of the results we've got, this is what we've found. We've found that 9 out of 10 people have never discussed their drug use. 9 out of the 10 Loop customers have never discussed their drug use with a healthcare professional before coming to speak to the Loop. When we do speak to people, the people who give the advice are either drugs workers like myself, nurses, doctors, social workers, people with some level of professional qualification who are skilled in working with people. And when we sit down with people, we don't just talk about the drug they've given us, we talk about their drug use generally, we talk about what they plan to do at the event that they're doing, and it allows us to have a good chat with them about harm reduction techniques based on their behaviour outside of the festival. That's before we even get onto the sample, about what we're talking about. Then we will discuss the sample they've given us, we will talk about the risks associated with that sample, and we will talk about sensible dosing, how to look after yourself, not taking too much, staying hydrated, looking after your mates, all these sorts of things. People are getting this message. And when you also consider that when people come for the information, they're usually coming in groups of 2, 3 and 4, so we're able to speak to 2, 3, 4 people at a time. And I think at Boomtown, the year before last, I think we had 1,100 samples dropped off over the weekend, but we'd given harm reduction interventions to over 3,000 people in the space of a weekend. So 3,000 people who'd never spoke to somebody with any sort of health training about the drug use got the opportunity to do that because we were on site offering the testing service. We found 9 out of 10, sorry I've said that, 1 in 5 samples have been missold. So 1 in 5 things that people have bought, they've not bought what they wanted to buy. When we've advised people that they have been missold, 2/3 of them people have given us their drugs to dispose of. So we are taking bad drugs, if you like, and that's a terrible phrase to use, out of circulation. Other people have said, I'm going to go and find that dealer and I'll get my money back, so hopefully they've been safe while doing that. One of the big successes, I think, is that 50% of the people that use our service say, yes, I'm still going to take the drug. I appreciate the advice you've given me, but I'm going to take this drug in smaller amounts and over a longer period. And that is really vital when we're talking about drugs like MDMA, amphetamine and cocaine. You know, the going slow and taking your time with it is really, really important. Because it's not my job, it's not our job to tell these people at festivals not to take drugs. Our job is to say, here are the facts, the decision you need to make is your own decision, but do it based on facts. Because like I say, in the market we've got now, people aren't taking drugs based on facts, they're taking drugs on hope. They hope that pill they've bought's okay. The lad looked alright, it didn't look sketchy, should be alright. It doesn't have to be like that. Now obviously in a regulated market I'd be out of a job and I'd be quite happy to be. In a regulated market people could buy ecstasy if they chose to take it, they wouldn't need to get it tested. But until that happens, we feel that what we're doing is going some way to helping to protect young people. Thank you.